At Morixa Tales, we believe in the power of storytelling. Our scripts weave together deep emotions and dramatic turns to deliver justice where it is most needed. Experience captivating mysteries where the truth eventually shines through, leaving a lasting impact on your heart and mind.
The thick cream envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I could smell the expense before I even opened it. Madison's wedding invitation was exactly what I expected from my younger sister, gold embossing tissue paper inserts, and enough pomp to make royalty jealous. I was halfway through admiring the calligraphy when my phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen, and I answered with genuine excitement, ready to gush about her beautiful invitations. But her words stopped me cold. Emma. My 15-year-old daughter wasn't invited. The wedding was adults only. She explained, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Teenagers would ruin the sophisticated atmosphere of her $200,000 celebration. By 6 the next morning, my phone had become a battlefield. Patricia, our mother, called 3 times before I even got out of bed. Her voice cracked with theatrical sobs as she pleaded with me to reconsider my decision. How could I destroy Madison's perfect day over something so trivial? Didn't I understand that weddings had themes, and Madison's theme just happened to exclude anyone who hadn't reached their 20th birthday? Robert, our father, took a different approach. His text messages read like corporate memos full of bullet points about family obligations and the importance of rising above petty disagreements. He even quoted some leadership book about choosing battles wisely, as if excluding my child from a family celebration was just another minor skirmish. The surprise came when Daniel called. My older brother usually stayed out of family drama like it was radioactive. He worked as a software engineer in Seattle and had perfected the art of being too busy to get involved. But there he was, trying to play mediator, suggesting compromises that made no sense. Maybe Emma could attend just the ceremony. Perhaps she could join for the reception dinner, but leave before dancing. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before, and something felt off about his sudden interest in peacekeeping. "Look, Coco," Daniel finally said after 20 minutes of circular conversation. "Madison's been calling everyone. She's really upset about this whole situation." "She's upset." I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. "She's the one who decided my daughter wasn't good enough for her wedding." Daniel sighed heavily. "That's not how she's telling it. She says you've been jealous of her engagement from day one, that you're using Emma as an excuse because you can't stand that she's marrying into money and having the wedding you never had." The accusation hit me like ice water. I'd been married once years ago in a simple ceremony at City Hall. My ex-husband turned out to be more interested in his secretary than his family, but I'd never regretted keeping our wedding small. She actually said that. She's been saying it to everyone who'll listen. Mom believes her. Dad's trying to stay neutral, but you know how he is about keeping peace. Madison's painting you as the bitter divorced sister who can't stand seeing her little sister happy. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the invitation that had started this war. The gold letters blurred as tears of frustration pricked my eyes. Not because I was hurt, but because I was furious. Madison had always been skilled at manipulation, but this was a new low. She'd turned a simple boundary I'd set to protect my daughter into a weapon against me. Emma walked into the kitchen, then dressed for school in her favorite purple sweater. She took one look at my face and the invitation in my hand, and her expression fell. "Aunt Madison called you, didn't she?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "It's okay, Mom," Emma said, pouring orange juice with forced casualness. "I didn't really want to go anyway. Weddings are boring." But I caught the way her hand trembled slightly as she set down the carton. My daughter, my brilliant, kind-hearted daughter, was trying to make me feel better about her own rejection. That's when my sadness crystallized into determination. Madison had crossed a line, and the family pressure only made me more certain of my decision. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had been a tradition since before I was born. Patricia prided herself on her pot roast, and Robert treated the weekly gathering like a mandatory board meeting for the family corporation. I knew Madison would be there playing the wounded victim, but I went anyway. Emma stayed home claiming she had a big history project due Monday. We both knew the real reason. The tension in the dining room was thick enough to cut with the antique silver Patricia only brought out for special occasions. Madison sat across from me, her engagement ring, catching the light with every dramatic gesture. She'd lost weight since getting engaged, and her cheekbones looked sharp enough to cut glass. Blake sat beside her, scrolling through his phone and occasionally murmuring agreement when she paused for breath. "I just don't understand why Coco has to make everything about her," Madison was saying as I served myself green beans. "This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and she's determined to ruin it." "I'm not ruining anything," I said calmly, though my hand tightened on the serving spoon. "I simply declined an invitation that excluded my daughter. That's my right as a parent." "God, you're so dramatic." Madison rolled her eyes. "It's not about Emma. It's about creating a sophisticated atmosphere. Blake's family has certain expectations." "What expectations?" I set down the spoon and looked directly at my sister. "That teenagers are what, too loud, too immature, too poor." Blake finally looked up from his phone. His eyes were cold as they met mine. "My family values elegance, Coco. Surely you can understand that not every event is appropriate for children." "Emma is 15, not 5, I replied. "She's on the honor roll, volunteers at the Literacy Center every weekend, and has better manners than most adults I know." Madison's face flushed. "This isn't about Emma's report card. Blake's mother specifically requested that we keep the guest list to adults only. His family is very particular about their social events. So you're excluding family members to impress your future in-laws." Patricia tried to intervene, but I wasn't done. "Who else isn't making the cut? Madison. Which other family members are too embarrassing for the Worthingtons?" The table went silent. Madison's flush deepened and she couldn't meet my eyes. Daniel cleared his throat uncomfortably, and his wife Jennifer suddenly became very interested in her water glass. "Tell them," I pressed. "Tell everyone who else you've uninvited." "It's not like that," Madison protested weakly. "Aunt Helen's son, Marcus, can't come either, Kenny. And what about Cousin Sarah's twins? They're 16. Are they too young for your sophisticated atmosphere, too?" Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. "Madison, you didn't." "It's just for the ceremony and reception," Madison burst out. "They can come to the rehearsal dinner. Blake's mother was very clear about maintaining a certain ambiance. She's paying for the premium bar package and the champagne fountain. She doesn't want teenagers around alcohol." "So this isn't even your decision," Robert finally spoke, his voice carefully measured. "You're excluding family members because your future mother-in-law told you to." Madison's eyes filled with tears, but they looked calculated rather than genuine. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. The Worthingtons have connections. Blake's father golfs with senators. His mother runs charity galas that raise millions. I can't just ignore their wishes and have some chaotic free-for-all wedding." "No one's asking for chaos," I said quietly. "We're asking you to include your family, all of your family." "Well, I can't." Madison slammed her hand on the table, making the glasses jump. "And if you can't understand that, then maybe it's better you don't come at all." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Blake looked up from his phone, sensing he might have to actually participate in the conversation. Patricia's face had gone pale, and Robert's jaw was clenched tight. "Fine," I said, standing up and placing my napkin on the table. "We agree on something." As I gathered my purse, Jennifer finally spoke. "Madison, do you hear yourself? You're choosing strangers over family." Madison's tears finally spilled over, but her voice was hard. "I'm choosing my future. If you can't support that, then you're not the family I thought you were." I left before I said something I couldn't take back, but as I drove home, I realized the truth was even uglier than I'd imagined. Madison wasn't just excluding Emma. She was systematically cutting out anyone who didn't fit the image she was trying to project. And the saddest part, she didn't even realize she was losing far more than she could ever gain. The house was too quiet when I got home. Usually Emma would be in the living room, her textbook spread across the coffee table, while music played softly from her laptop. Instead, I found her door closed, a thin line of light visible underneath. I knocked gently and heard a muffled, "Come in." Emma sat cross-legged on her bed, her laptop open in front of her. She quickly minimized whatever she'd been looking at, but not before I caught a glimpse of Madison's social media page. Her eyes were red-rimmed, though she tried to smile when she saw me. "How was dinner?" she asked, her voice artificially bright. "Did Grandma make her famous apple pie?" I sat on the edge of her bed, studying my daughter's face. "Emma, what's wrong?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. "Just working on that history project." "The one that was mysteriously due on a Sunday night." I raised an eyebrow. "Want to try again?" Her shoulders slumped, and suddenly she looked younger than her 15 years. "It's stupid. I shouldn't let it bother me." "What shouldn't bother you?" Emma bit her lip, then turned her laptop toward me. Madison's Instagram page filled the screen, showcasing a series of posts about her upcoming wedding. The captions were full of hashtags like adult sophistication, elegant affair, child-free and loving it. But it was the comments that made my blood boil. Madison had been responding to friends' questions about the guest list with thinly veiled references to keeping the event classy and mature. "She's been messaging me," Emma said quietly, "telling me not to take it personally, that when I'm older, I'll understand the importance of maintaining certain standards." "She what?" I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. "Show me." Emma reluctantly pulled up her messages. Madison's texts were a masterclass in passive-aggressive manipulation. She talked about how Emma would understand when she was planning her own wedding someday, how some events were just meant for adults to enjoy without worrying about younger guests, how it wasn't about Emma specifically, just about creating the right atmosphere. "But that's not even the worst part," Emma said, her voice breaking slightly. "Remember the barbecue at Grandma's last month when you were helping in the kitchen?" I nodded, remembering the 4th of July gathering where Madison had announced her engagement. I overheard her talking to Blake's sister by the pool. She didn't know I was behind the hedge reading. She called me. Emma paused, swallowing hard. She said I was awkward and embarrassing, that I always say the wrong thing and dress like a tomboy. Blake's sister asked if I'd be in the wedding party, and Madison laughed. She said she was relieved to have an excuse to exclude me because she couldn't imagine having to deal with my teenage drama on her special day. The pain in my daughter's voice shattered something inside me. Emma was many things: brilliant, creative, compassionate, and yes, sometimes awkward in that way all teenagers are as they figure out who they're becoming. But embarrassing, never. "Oh, sweetheart." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her shoulders shake with suppressed tears. "I know I'm not like her," Emma mumbled against my shoulder. "I don't care about designer clothes or makeup tutorials. I'd rather read than go to parties. But I thought she loved me anyway. I thought being family meant something." "It does mean something," I said, firmly pulling back to look her in the eyes. "Just not to the right people, apparently." Emma wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "You know what's really pathetic? I was excited about her wedding. I'd never been to a fancy one before. I even looked up what to wear to a black tie event. I found this dress online, a deep blue one that wasn't too expensive. I saved the link to show you later." She pulled up another browser tab showing a modest but elegant dress that would have been perfect for a formal wedding. The fact that she'd been planning, getting excited, making an effort, only to be rejected for simply existing, made my anger burn hotter. "I want to show you something," I said, taking her laptop. I pulled up my own Facebook page and showed her the messages I'd been receiving from family members. "See, Aunt Helen is going through the same thing with Marcus. Cousin Sarah can't bring the twins. Madison isn't just excluding you. She's cutting out every young person in our family." "But why?" Emma asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "What did we all do wrong?" "Absolutely nothing," I said firmly. "This is about Madison trying to be someone she's not to impress people who don't matter. And you know what? Their loss. Because you, Emma Grace Sullivan, are extraordinary exactly as you are. Any event that wouldn't welcome you isn't worth attending." Emma managed a small smile. "You're just saying that because you're my mom." "I'm saying it because it's true. And someday Madison is going to realize what she threw away for a champagne fountain and some senator's golf buddies' approval." We sat there for a while, Emma leaning against my shoulder as we scrolled through Madison's increasingly pretentious wedding posts. Each one was like a small betrayal, a reminder of how far my sister had drifted from the person she used to be. "Mom," Emma said eventually, "promise me something." "Anything." "If I ever get married, promise you'll remind me that family is more important than fountains." I kissed the top of her head. "Deal. But honestly, sweetheart, I don't think you'll need the reminder." Grandmother Rose didn't do summons. She did invitations that you'd be foolish to decline. So when she called Tuesday morning asking me to come for tea that afternoon, I knew it was serious. Rose lived in the same Victorian house where she'd raised her children, a sprawling place with creaking floors and memories in every corner. At 92, she was sharp as a tack and twice as pointed when she wanted to be. I found her in the sunroom, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing the pearls she never left the house without. The tea service was already laid out with her best china, the one with the tiny painted roses that had belonged to her mother. "Sit," she said without preamble. "We need to talk about this wedding nonsense." I sat accepting the cup she poured with hands that barely trembled despite her age. "I suppose everyone's been calling you." "Oh, they've tried." Rose's eyes sparkled with something between amusement and irritation. "Your mother cried. Your father lectured. Madison sent me a 5-page letter about the importance of respecting her choices. Bunch of hogwash, if you ask me." "So you don't think I'm being unreasonable?" Rose snorted a decidedly unladylike sound that she'd never have made in public. "Unreasonable. You're the only one in this family showing any backbone. That girl has lost her mind if she thinks excluding children from a family wedding is acceptable. In my day, weddings were about joining families, not auditioning for the society pages." She set down her teacup with a decisive clink. "But that's not why I asked you here. Follow me." I followed her up the stairs to her bedroom where she kept the family safe. She worked the combination with practiced ease and pulled out a worn leather box. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, lay a necklace that took my breath away. 3 strands of diamonds caught the afternoon light with a central stone that had to be at least 5 carats. "Your grandfather gave this to me on our 10th anniversary," Rose said, running her fingers over the diamonds. "Spent every penny of his savings and then some. Foolish man. I told him I'd rather have a new washing machine, but he insisted a woman should have something beautiful that's just hers." "It's stunning." I breathed, having never seen it before. "I had no idea you had this." "Because I never wear it," Rose said pragmatically. "Too fancy for church, too valuable for every day. But your grandfather made me promise something before he died. He wanted it to go to the next generation to be worn at family celebrations. He was very specific about that. Family celebrations." She closed the box and handed it to me. I nearly dropped it from shock. "Grandma, I can't—" "You're not," she interrupted. "Emma is. I'm naming her as the heir to this necklace. It's worth about $50,000 at last appraisal, though the sentimental value is considerably higher. But Madison has made her choices," Rose said firmly. "She's decided that appearances matter more than family, that social climbing trumps blood ties. Well, this necklace represents everything she's thrown away. It should go to someone who understands its true value." "She'll be devastated," I said, though I couldn't deny the small flame of satisfaction in my chest. "Good," Rose said bluntly. "Maybe it'll knock some sense into her, though I doubt it. That Blake fellow has her so turned around she doesn't know up from down anymore." We returned to the sunroom where Rose poured fresh tea and fixed me with her penetrating gaze. "Now I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to keep it under your hat for now. I've been revising my will." "Grandma—" "Hush and listen," she commanded. "I'm old, not immortal. These things need to be addressed. I've watched how this family has handled Madison's wedding, and it's been very educational. Your parents mean well, but they're weak. They'd rather keep a false peace than stand for what's right. Daniel's too removed to care. But you put your daughter first, even when it cost you. She reached over and patted my hand. I planned to announce the necklace bequest at Madison's wedding. Thought it would be a nice moment passing the torch and all that. But since you won't be there, and neither will Emma, I suppose I'll have to find another venue. You don't have to do that, I said, though the thought of Madison's face when she learned about the necklace was admittedly appealing. This is already so generous. Generous nothing, Rose scoffed. It's what's right. Your grandfather would spin in his grave if he knew his great-granddaughter was banned from a family wedding for being too young. He adored children, said they were the only honest people left in the world. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about everything except the wedding. Rose told me stories about my grandfather I'd never heard about their early struggles, the children they'd lost, the love that sustained them through 63 years of marriage. By the time I left the leather box tucked safely in my purse, I felt both lighter and heavier. As I drove home, I thought about legacies and what we leave behind. Madison thought she was building something important with her society wedding and wealthy in-laws, but Rose had just shown me what real inheritance looked like: values passed down through generations, love that outlasted diamonds, and the courage to stand for what's right, even when it costs you. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table when I got home. I set the box in front of her and watched her eyes widen as she opened it. "Is this real?" she whispered, afraid to touch the necklace. "Very real. And someday it'll be yours. A gift from your great-grandmother who thinks you're worth more than all the champagne fountains in the world." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Does Aunt Madison know?" "Not yet," I admitted, "but she will." And for the first time since this whole mess started, I found myself looking forward to that conversation. The confrontation came sooner than expected. 3 days after my visit with Grandmother Rose, I was preparing dinner when a car screeched into my driveway. Through the kitchen window, I watched Madison storm out of her white Mercedes, her face twisted with rage. Blake followed more slowly, his expression unreadable behind expensive sunglasses. "Emma." I called upstairs. "Go to your room and put your headphones on." "Is it Aunt Madison?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Just do it, sweetheart, please." I barely had time to dry my hands before Madison burst through my front door without knocking. Her perfectly styled hair was disheveled and mascara smudged beneath her eyes. "How dare you!" she shrieked, waving her phone in my face. "How dare you manipulate Grandma Rose against me?" "I did no such thing," I replied calmly, though my heart was racing. "Would you like to come in and discuss this like adults?" "Don't patronize me, Coco. I know what you did. Sarah texted me. She heard from Jennifer, who heard from Mom, that Grandma is giving Emma the Vanderbilt necklace. That necklace was supposed to be mine. Supposed to be... I crossed my arms. According to whom did Grandma Rose ever promise it to you? Blake finally entered, removing his sunglasses to reveal cold blue eyes. "This is what happens when you let jealousy consume you," he said to Madison, though his words were clearly meant for me. "Your sister can't stand that you're marrying up, so she poisons your family against you." Marrying up. I couldn't help but laugh. "Is that what you call it?" "What else would you call it?" Blake stepped forward, his voice dripping condescension. "I'm offering Madison a life you could never provide. Private jets, vacation homes, connections that matter. And you're trying to sabotage it because your own marriage failed." "My marriage ended because my ex-husband couldn't keep his pants zipped," I shot back. At least I had the self-respect to leave instead of pretending money could buy happiness. Madison's face flushed darker. "You've always been bitter about my success. First you tried to ruin my engagement party by bringing up ancient history. Then you turned my wedding into a battlefield. Now you're stealing my inheritance." "I haven't stolen anything," I said firmly. "Grandmother Rose makes her own decisions. Maybe if you hadn't decided half the family wasn't good enough for your precious wedding, she might have decided differently. This is about that bratty kid, isn't it? Blake interjected, his mask finally slipping. All this drama because we didn't want some awkward teenager ruining our special day. The silence that followed his words was deafening. Even Madison looked shocked at his harsh phrasing. What did you just call my daughter? My voice had gone dangerously quiet. Blake, perhaps sensing he'd overstepped, tried to backtrack. I simply meant that teenagers can be disruptive at formal events. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal. I stepped closer to him, my anger finally breaking through. You just called my 15-year-old daughter bratty and awkward. That sounds pretty personal to me. Well, if the shoe fits, Blake muttered, and Madison grabbed his arm. Blake, stop, she hissed, but the damage was done. No, let him continue, I said. Let's hear what else he thinks about my family, about your family, Madison, because that's what we are, whether you like it or not. Blake shook off Madison's hand. Your family is exactly the problem. Small-town minds, middle-class mediocrity. Madison deserves better than potluck dinners and backyard barbecues. She deserves elegant sophistication, the finer things in life. The finer things? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean like respect, loyalty, love, because from where I'm standing, you're offering her none of those. Madison's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand Coco. Blake's family has expectations, standards. I'm trying to fit into their world. By abandoning yours? I shook my head. Madison, you're not trying to fit in. You're trying to disappear. You're erasing everything that makes you who you are to become some Stepford wife for a man who thinks your family is beneath him. That's not true, Madison protested. Blake loves me. Blake loves what you can become, I corrected. The perfect accessory to his perfect life. But what happens when you can't live up to that image anymore? When you gain weight or get older or, God forbid, have an opinion he doesn't like? Blake's face had turned an ugly shade of red. You're nothing but white trash trying to drag Madison down to your level. She's finally escaping this pathetic family and you can't stand it. The words hung in the air like a poison cloud. Madison gasped, and even she couldn't pretend he hadn't meant them. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Both of you, now. Coco, Madison started, but I held up my hand. I said get out, and Madison. When this fairy tale of yours comes crashing down, and trust me, it will don't come crying to me. You've made your choice. Blake grabbed Madison's arm, pulling her toward the door. Come on, babe, we don't need this toxic energy in our lives. As they left, I heard Blake muttering about restraining orders and defamation lawsuits. Madison looked back, once her face a mixture of anger and something that might have been regret. But she didn't say anything. She just got in the car and let him drive her away. I stood in my doorway watching their car disappear down the street. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or sadness. I was furious. Furious that my sister had chosen a man who openly despised her family. Furious that she was so blinded by the promise of wealth that she couldn't see what she was sacrificing. Mom. Emma's voice came from behind me. I recorded the whole thing on my phone. I turned to find her standing on the stairs, her phone in hand, and tears streaming down her face. You heard all that? I asked, my heart breaking. She nodded. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you told me to stay in my room, but when I heard shouting, I pulled her into a hug. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry you had to hear that. He called me bratty, Emma whispered, and white trash. Does Aunt Madison really think that about us? I don't know what your aunt thinks anymore, I admitted. But none of what he said is true. You know that, right? Emma pulled back, and there was steel in her eyes that reminded me of Grandmother Rose. I know. And I think the rest of the family should know, too. They should hear exactly what kind of man Madison is marrying. Emma, I don't know if that's... Mom, she interrupted. They're all pressuring you to give in, to go to the wedding and pretend everything's fine. But they don't know the whole truth. They don't know what Blake really thinks of us, of them. Don't they deserve to know? I looked at my daughter, wise beyond her years, and realized she was right. The family had been operating under the assumption that this was just about Madison being a bit exclusionary. They didn't know the depth of contempt Blake held for all of us. They didn't know Madison was complicit in it. "What are you thinking?" I asked. Emma held up her phone. "I'm thinking Grandma Rose isn't the only one who knows how to share important information with the family." By breakfast the next morning, Emma's recording had reached every branch of our family tree. She'd been strategic about it, sending it first to Grandmother Rose with a simple message. "I thought you should hear this." Rose, never one to mince words, had forwarded it to my parents with her own addition. "This is who Madison has chosen over family." My phone started ringing at 7:30. Patricia was first, her voice a mixture of shock and denial. "It has to be taken out of context," she insisted, though I could hear the doubt creeping in. Blake was probably just stressed about the wedding. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. "He meant every word, Mom," I said tiredly, and Madison stood there and let him say it. "But she tried to stop him," Patricia protested weakly. "I heard her tell him to stop." "Only after he'd already called Emma bratty. She didn't defend us. She didn't defend Emma. She just stood there." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, Patricia spoke again, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I've been calling everyone trying to smooth this over, telling them you were being unreasonable. But this... Coco, does Blake really think we're all beneath him?" "Yes," I said simply, "and Madison is letting him." The next call was from Daniel. My brother, who'd been trying so hard to stay neutral, sounded shaken. "Jennifer and I listened to the recording together," he said without preamble. 3 times. I keep thinking I must have misheard, but did he actually call our family white trash? "Among other things," I confirmed. "Still think I'm being petty about the wedding invitation." "Jesus, Coco." I heard him take a deep breath. "Jennifer's furious. She's already told her sister not to bother flying in for the wedding. We won't be attending either." "You don't have to do that," I said, though relief flooded through me at his support. "Yes, we do," Daniel said firmly. "I've been trying to keep the peace, but there's no peace to keep here. Blake just declared war on our entire family, and Madison... God, what happened to her? The defections continued throughout the day. Aunt Helen called to say she was relieved Marcus had been excluded, if that's how Blake felt about their family. Cousin Sarah was so angry she could barely speak coherently, but managed to convey that she'd rather eat glass than attend Madison's wedding now. Even distant relatives who rarely involved themselves in family drama were taking sides. But not everyone rallied to our defense. Patricia's sister Linda called me directly to express her disapproval. "You've destroyed this family," she accused, sharing private conversations turning everyone against Madison. "She's just a young woman in love trying to navigate a difficult situation." "She's 28 years old," I countered. "That's old enough to stand up to a man who insults her family." "You don't understand the pressure she's under," Linda insisted. "The Worthington family is practically royalty in their circles. Do you know Blake's mother was featured in Town and Country last year? Madison is trying to fit into that world." "By letting them call us white trash," Linda huffed. "I'm sure that was just hyperbole. You're being too sensitive." The most surprising call came from Robert. My father, who usually left emotional conversations to Patricia, asked if he could come by that evening. When he arrived, he looked older than his 68 years. We sat on my back porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. For a long time he didn't speak, just sipped the coffee I'd made him. "I failed her." He finally said, his voice heavy with regret. "Dad, no, let me finish." He set down his mug and turned to face me. "I spent so much time teaching you kids about success that I forgot to teach you about values. Madison learned the wrong lessons from me. She thinks achievement means money and status. She thinks winning means leaving others behind." "You didn't teach her to be cruel," I said gently. "Didn't I?" He laughed bitterly. I celebrated every promotion, every raise, every step up the ladder. But did I celebrate kindness, loyalty, family? I turned life into a competition, and Madison decided the prize was worth any cost. It's not too late, I offered. She could still choose differently. Robert shook his head. You didn't see her today. Your mother and I tried to talk to her after we heard the recording. She doubled down Coco, said Blake was just being protective of their future, said we were all overreacting, said if we couldn't support her happiness, maybe it was better if we stayed away. The words hit me like a physical blow. Madison was actively choosing Blake over everyone who'd loved her all her life. What are you going to do? I asked. What you did, Robert said simply. Patricia doesn't agree yet, but I won't be at that wedding. I won't stand there and smile while she marries a man who has such contempt for everything we are. As he left that night, he hugged me longer than he had in years. I'm proud of you, he whispered. You did the right thing, even when it was hard. That's real success. By the end of the week, the family was split into clear camps. Those who'd heard the recording and taken it seriously were boycotting the wedding. Those who thought we were overreacting or who valued keeping up appearances more than principles were still planning to attend. But the most telling reaction came from Grandmother Rose. She'd listened to the recording once, then called a family meeting at her house. Only those boycotting the wedding were invited. As we gathered in her living room, she stood before us with the ramrod posture of a general addressing troops. I've lived through the Depression, a world war, the civil rights movement, and more family dramas than I can count, she began. But I've never seen such a clear case of someone choosing fool's gold over real treasure. Madison has made her bed. Now she'll have to lie in it. But she gestured to all of us. We're still family. We still have each other, and that's worth more than all the Worthington money in the world. The call from Veronica Hartwell came on a Wednesday afternoon 2 months before the wedding. I didn't recognize the number, but her introduction immediately caught my attention. Ms. Sullivan. My name is Veronica Hartwell. I'm the wedding planner for your sister's event. I wonder if we could meet for coffee. There are some concerns I feel you should be aware of. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, far from Madison's usual haunts. Veronica was exactly what I'd expected from someone planning society weddings, impeccably dressed, perfectly composed, and professionally polished. What I hadn't expected was the worry in her eyes. I'm taking a huge risk meeting with you. She began stirring her latte with precise movements. I could lose my business if Madison found out, but I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've never encountered a situation quite like this. What kind of situation? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Veronica pulled out a leather folder and slid it across the table. Inside were invoices, contracts, and email printouts. The numbers made my eyes water. The flowers alone cost more than some people's cars. Madison hired me 6 months ago, Veronica explained. She presented herself as someone with significant financial backing. She showed me Blake's family connections, talked about their business holdings, implied that money was no object. I took her at her word. But the check started bouncing 2 months ago. Veronica's professional facade cracked slightly. First, it was small things, the deposit for the string quartet, the payment for the invitation calligraphy. Madison always had excuses, bank errors, timing issues with transfers. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I scanned the documents, my stomach sinking with each page. How much does she owe? Between my fee and the vendors, nearly $40,000. Veronica leaned back, exhaustion evident in her posture. And that's just what's overdue. The total wedding cost is approaching $200,000. Good God, I breathed. How did it get this far? Madison is very convincing, Veronica said wryly. She pays just enough to keep people hopeful. 1,000 here, 2,000 there. Always with promises that the full payment is coming. She claims Blake's family is handling the major expenses, but they need to liquidate some investments first. And you believe this? Veronica had the grace to look embarrassed. The Worthington name carries weight in certain circles. Blake's mother does indeed run charity galas, his father does golf with influential people. But when I started making discreet inquiries, she trailed off, pulling out another document. This one appeared to be a credit report. "I have a friend in banking," she said carefully. "Nothing illegal, just public information anyone could find if they knew where to look. The Worthingtons are leveraged to the hilt. Multiple mortgages, maxed credit lines, judgments from unpaid debts. They're one missed payment away from bankruptcy." The pieces started falling into place. Blake's desperation to marry into what he thought was money. Madison's frantic attempts to create the perfect society wedding. The exclusion of teenagers to impress people who were themselves frauds. "But there's more," Veronica continued, her voice dropping. "Madison has been telling vendors that her family will cover any shortfalls. She's specifically mentioned that her grandmother has significant assets. She's implied that once certain family members are dealt with, the money will flow freely." Dealt with. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? Your guess is as good as mine. But several vendors have mentioned that Madison seemed very confident the money would appear after the holidays. She kept mentioning that family dynamics would shift in her favor by then. I thought about Grandmother Rose's necklace, her hints about the will, and felt sick. She's counting on inheritances that aren't coming. That's what I'm afraid of, Veronica agreed. But it gets worse. When vendors push too hard for payment, Madison threatens them. She mentions Blake's family lawyers, implies they could face lawsuits for breach of contract or defamation if they complain publicly. She's created a culture of fear among the people working on this wedding. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I was grateful for the information. Veronica was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Because I've planned weddings for truly wealthy families, and this isn't how they operate. Real money doesn't need to threaten or manipulate. It doesn't bounce checks or make excuses, and it certainly doesn't exclude family members to maintain an illusion." She gathered her documents, sliding them back into the folder. "I'm going to have to pull out soon. My reputation can't survive being associated with this disaster. But I wanted someone in your family to know the truth. Madison is in deep trouble, and she's dragging others down with her. What do you think I should do with this information?" "Whatever you think is best." Veronica stood smoothing her skirt. "But if I were you, I'd make sure any family members still planning to attend this wedding know what they're really supporting. This isn't going to be the social event of the season. It's going to be a catastrophe." As she left, she turned back one more time. "Oh, and Ms. Sullivan, that recording your daughter made, several vendors have heard it. Word is spreading that the Worthington-Madison wedding is built on contempt for the very people they're trying to impress. Society has a long memory for that sort of thing." After she left, I sat in the cafe for another hour processing what I'd learned. Madison wasn't just choosing Blake over family. She was building a house of cards that was about to collapse, and she was willing to bury anyone who threatened her delusion. I thought about calling her, warning her about what was coming. But then I remembered Blake's words, the recording her choice to stand by him. She'd made her position clear. The question now was whether the rest of the family would see the truth before they got caught in the collapse. That evening, I called Daniel. "We need another family meeting," I said. "There are things everyone needs to know." "More drama?" he asked, though his tone was resigned rather than dismissive. "More truth," I corrected. "And trust me, this truth is going to change everything." 3 weeks after my meeting with Veronica, fate intervened in the most unexpected way. Emma's school was hosting its annual Academic Excellence Awards ceremony, and my daughter was being recognized for her achievements in creative writing and social studies. The auditorium was packed with proud parents and fidgeting siblings. I was adjusting the settings on my camera when a woman slid into the empty seat beside me. She was elegantly dressed in understated designer clothes, her silver hair styled in a classic bob. "Excuse me," she said with a warm smile, "but would you happen to be Coco Sullivan?" I tensed, immediately wary. "Yes, why?" "I thought so. You look just like your sister Madison." She extended a manicured hand. "I'm Catherine Worthington Mills Blake's aunt. My daughter Sophia is receiving an award today as well." My mind raced. Was this an ambush, another Worthington come to tell me how inappropriate my family was? But Catherine's expression held none of Blake's cold arrogance. "I heard about the wedding situation," she continued quietly as the ceremony began. "I want you to know that not all of us agree with Blake and his parents' behavior." "I'm surprised to hear that," I whispered back, genuinely shocked. Catherine's laugh was soft and bitter. "I'm the black sheep of the Worthington family, Ms. Sullivan. I married for love instead of money, chose a career in education over society parties. My brother Harold Blake's father hasn't spoken to me in years, except when he needs something." We paused our conversation as the principal began announcing awards. I watched Emma walk across the stage with quiet pride, her face glowing as she accepted her certificates. A few minutes later, a girl who looked nothing like Blake but had Catherine's kind eyes received awards for mathematics and science. During the musical interlude, Catherine leaned closer. "I need to tell you something about Blake's family, something Madison clearly doesn't know." "I've already heard they're in financial trouble," I said carefully. Catherine's eyebrows rose. "You're well informed, but do you know why?" I shook my head. "Harold built his supposed empire on smoke and mirrors," she explained. "Bad investments, failed business ventures, each one covered up with loans for the next big scheme. The country club, memberships, the charity galas, even the cars. It's all leased or bought on credit. They've been living off reputation and borrowed time for years." "But Blake told Madison his family has connections influence." "Oh, they do," Catherine said darkly. "Harold is excellent at cultivating relationships with people who matter. He name-drops glad hands, makes himself useful to actually wealthy people. But it's all performance. The Senator Blake brags about his father golfing with Harold, caddied for him once at a charity tournament." My mind reeled. "So Blake is marrying Madison because he and his parents are convinced your family has money," Catherine finished. "Old money, specifically. Harold did his research, found out about your grandmother's beautiful Victorian house, the family business your grandfather built. He assumed there were trust funds, inheritances, assets hidden away." "That's insane," I protested. "We're comfortable, but we're not wealthy. Grandmother Rose lives frugally. The family business was sold decades ago." "I tried to tell Harold that," Catherine said with a sigh, "but Blake had already started dating Madison, and she was so eager to present herself as coming from means. The designer bags the expensive car the way she talked about family properties and investments. Harold saw what he wanted to see." The ceremony continued around us, but I barely heard it. Everything made horrible sense now. Two families each pretending to be something they weren't, building a relationship on mutual deception. "There's something else," Catherine said, her voice dropping even lower. "Blake's grandfather, my father, set up a trust before he died. It's worth several $1,000,000, but it has very specific conditions. Blake only gets access if he's married with children by his 30th birthday. He's 29 now. So the rushed wedding..." "Exactly. And the pregnancy Madison announced at Thanksgiving, Blake's been pressuring her about that since their third date. He needs that baby to unlock the trust. Without it, he's just another failed Worthington drowning in debt like his father." "Does Madison know about the trust?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "Blake told her about it," Catherine confirmed. "But he made it sound like family tradition rather than desperation. Painted it as his grandfather wanting to ensure the family legacy continued. Madison probably thinks it's romantic." The ceremony was ending, parents starting to gather their children and head for the reception. Catherine stood smoothing her dress. "I debated whether to tell you this," she said. "Family loyalty and all that. But when I heard about them excluding your daughter, calling your family names, I couldn't stay silent. Madison seems like a nice girl who's gotten caught up in my nephew's web of lies. She's made her choices," I said, though, with less conviction than before. Catherine studied me with knowing eyes. "Has she..." Or has she been manipulated by experts? The Worthington men are very good at making women believe they're choosing freely while guiding them exactly where they want them. She handed me a business card. My personal number, in case you need anything, and Ms. Sullivan, that trust fund. Blake's counting on, there's another condition he doesn't know about. My father was many things, but he wasn't stupid. He required that any marriage last at least 5 years before funds are released. Blake's in for a very unpleasant surprise if he thinks he can grab the money and run. As she walked away to find her daughter, I stood frozen in place. Emma bounded up to me, certificates in hand, face shining with accomplishment. "Mom, did you see I got the Creative Writing Award? And look, there's a scholarship opportunity attached for next year." I hugged her tightly, breathing in her shampoo and youth and promise. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. So incredibly proud." "Are you okay?" Emma pulled back, studying my face. "You look upset." "Just processing some information," I said honestly. "But tonight is about you. How about we go get ice cream to celebrate?" As we left the auditorium, I saw Catherine across the parking lot hugging her daughter just as tightly as I'd held Emma. She caught my eye and nodded once, a silent acknowledgement between mothers who understood what really mattered. The drive home was filled with Emma's excited chatter about the awards, her plans for the scholarship application, her ideas for new stories. But my mind kept circling back to Catherine's revelations. Madison wasn't just a willing participant in this farce. She was a mark chosen specifically for what Blake thought she could provide. The question now was whether I should tell her. Would she even believe me? Or was she so deep in the fantasy that the truth would only make her dig in harder? Thanksgiving arrived with unusual tension crackling through the family. Patricia had insisted on hosting, despite the circumstances clinging to tradition like a life raft in stormy seas. The email invitation had been carefully worded: "Family Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone welcome. Please leave disagreements at the door." Emma and I arrived to find the house split like a wedding reception gone wrong. Madison and Blake held court in the living room with Linda and a handful of cousins who still supported them. The dining room hosted what Emma quietly dubbed the Resistance: Daniel and Jennifer, Aunt Helen, cousin Sarah, and surprisingly Robert. Patricia fluttered between the two camps like a desperate diplomat, refilling drinks and offering appetizers with increasingly strained smiles. Grandmother Rose sat in her usual chair by the fireplace, observing everything with sharp eyes and saying nothing. "This is ridiculous," Emma whispered to me as we helped set the table. "It's like the Civil War, but with turkey." She wasn't wrong. Conversation stopped when members of opposing camps passed in the hallway. Blake made a point of loudly discussing his family's multiple homes whenever anyone from our side was within earshot. Madison laughed too loudly at his stories, her eyes never quite meeting ours. Dinner began with Patricia's traditional prayer, though the words about gratitude and family unity rang hollow. We'd barely started passing dishes when Madison clinked her fork against her glass. "Blake and I have an announcement," she said, her voice bright with forced excitement. My stomach dropped. Beside me, Emma tensed. Madison stood one hand on Blake's shoulder, the other pressed to her stomach in a gesture that told the story before her words did. "We're having a baby." The room erupted in a mixture of congratulations and stunned silence. Patricia burst into tears of joy. Linda rushed to hug Madison, and Blake sat back with a satisfied smile that made my skin crawl. "When are you due?" Patricia asked, already apparently planning the nursery. "Late May." Madison beamed. "Just in time for summer. We're so excited to start our family properly." Properly. Grandmother Rose spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the celebration like a blade. "What does that mean exactly?" Madison's smile faltered slightly. "Well, you know, doing things in the right order. Marriage, then children. Creating a stable environment. Unlike some people," Blake added, his eyes finding mine across the table. The implication about my divorce and single motherhood wasn't subtle. "Yes," Madison continued, emboldened by his support. "And this just proves we made the right decision about the wedding. Can you imagine having chaotic teenagers running around when I'll be dealing with morning sickness? The adults-only policy was clearly the smart choice. Chaotic teenagers. Daniel set down his wine glass carefully. You mean like Emma, who's sitting right here? Madison had the grace to look slightly ashamed, but she rallied quickly. I'm just saying that different life stages don't always mix well. Babies need calm, controlled environments. Which is why Emma won't be welcome around the baby either, I suppose. I asked, my voice deadly calm. Madison's eyes widened. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, Aunt Helen interjected. Your meaning is quite clear. First, our teenagers aren't sophisticated enough for your wedding. Now they're too chaotic for your baby. When exactly will our children be good enough for you, Madison? This isn't about good enough, Madison protested. Why does everyone have to make everything so dramatic? Blake's mother says it's perfectly normal to have boundaries around children. Blake's mother, Grandmother Rose repeated slowly, the woman who's never met most of us but somehow has opinions about our family. Blake leaned forward, his expression patronizing. My mother has raised successful children in proper society. She understands things that, he gestured vaguely around the table, might not be apparent to everyone. Successful. Robert spoke up, surprising everyone. Interesting definition of success. Tell me, Blake, how exactly do you measure that by debt-to-income ratio? By how many people you can fool into thinking you have money? The color drained from Blake's face. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Robert continued steadily. I'm stating facts. I spent my career in banking, son. Did you really think I wouldn't do due diligence on the man marrying my daughter? Daddy, Madison gasped, you investigated Blake. I investigated the Worthington family finances, Robert corrected. Public records, credit reports, business filings, all perfectly legal and quite illuminating. Blake stood abruptly. This is harassment. Madison, we're leaving. Sit down, Grandmother Rose commanded with such authority that Blake actually complied. You wanted to be part of this family badly enough to get my granddaughter pregnant. You'll sit through one family dinner. How dare you suggest, Blake started. Oh, please. Catherine Worthington Mills's information suddenly made perfect sense, and I decided to use it. We all know about the trust fund, Blake, the one that requires marriage and children before your 30th birthday. When is that again? 4 months from now? Madison's face cycled through emotions, confusion, realization, and then desperate denial. That's not... Blake wanted children because he loves me. Tell them, Blake. Blake's silence spoke volumes. Oh, Madison. Patricia breathed, her joy evaporating. Please tell me you didn't get pregnant for money. It's not like that, Madison insisted, but her voice cracked. Blake loves me. We love each other. The trust is just timing. Timing. Jennifer laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? And what happens after Blake gets his money? Madison. What's to stop him from leaving once the check clears? The marriage has to last 5 years, I said, quietly watching Blake's face carefully. His shock was genuine. He hadn't known about that condition. What? He demanded. That's not... Where did you hear that? From your Aunt Catherine, I replied. You know the family member you actually have who's worth knowing. She was quite informative about a lot of things. Madison sank into her chair, hands still pressed to her stomach. 5 years. Did you think you could just pop out a baby and cash in? Cousin Sarah asked incredulously. Madison, what have you gotten yourself into? Nothing. Madison's voice rose hysterically. We're in love, we're having a baby. Why can't any of you just be happy for me? Because you've lost yourself, Emma said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at my 15-year-old daughter who'd been silent throughout dinner. The Aunt Madison I used to know would never exclude family from her wedding. She wouldn't let anyone call us names, and she definitely wouldn't get pregnant as part of some business transaction. You don't understand anything, Madison spat. You're just a child. Maybe, Emma agreed calmly. But I understand that real love doesn't require you to abandon your family. It doesn't make you ashamed of where you come from, and it definitely doesn't use babies as bargaining chips. The room fell silent. Madison's face crumbled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Blake tried to comfort her, but she shrugged him off. "I think," Grandmother Rose said finally, "that we've had enough announcements for one evening." But Blake wasn't finished. "You people," he sneered, "sitting here in judgment. What have any of you accomplished? Madison is trying to elevate herself to be something more than this small-town mediocrity, and you're dragging her down out of jealousy." Elevate herself. Daniel stood slowly. By marrying a con artist from a family of grifters. That's not elevation, Blake. That's prostitution with extra steps. Blake lunged across the table, but Robert and Daniel were ready, catching him before he could reach anyone. In the chaos, Madison screamed, Patricia dropped the gravy boat, and Emma pulled out her phone with the practiced ease of her generation. "And that," Emma said clearly, making sure her camera caught Blake being restrained, "is who you're having a baby with Aunt Madison. Hope it's worth it." Blake shook off the restraining hands, grabbed Madison, and stormed out. The door slammed behind them, leaving a table full of cold turkey and shattered illusions. "Well," Grandmother Rose said into the silence, "I suppose we know what we're not thankful for this year." The cleanup was subdued. Those who remained worked together the earlier divisions forgotten in the wake of the spectacular implosion. Patricia cried quietly while washing dishes. Robert poured himself a scotch and stared out the window. Emma helped me pack leftovers that no one wanted. "I'm scared for her," Emma admitted quietly. "The baby. What kind of life will it have?" I hugged her close. "All we can do is be here when she needs us, if she ever admits she needs us." As we prepared to leave, Grandmother Rose pulled me aside. That was well played, revealing the 5-year clause, though I suspect things will fall apart long before that becomes relevant. "You think she'll leave him?" Rose shook her head sadly. "I think he'll leave her once he realizes there's no money to be had. The question is whether she'll come back to us when he does." Driving home through the dark November night, Emma and I were quiet. The pregnancy announcement should have been joyful. Instead, it felt like watching someone sign their own prison sentence. Madison was now tied to Blake in the most permanent way possible, and we all knew it wasn't going to end well. "Mom," Emma asked as we pulled into our driveway, "do you think Aunt Madison knows we still love her, even after everything?" I thought about my sister pregnant and probably crying in Blake's car as he raged about our family. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so." But hope felt fragile against the weight of everything that had happened. Madison had made her choice, and now there would be consequences none of us could protect her from. Not anymore. December arrived with an unexpected summons from Grandmother Rose. Not the gentle invitations we were accustomed to, but formal letters on her personal stationery, requesting the presence of specific family members at her home on December 15th at 2 o'clock sharp. The list was telling everyone who'd boycotted Madison's wedding plans received an invitation. Those still supporting her did not. "Should we be worried?" Emma asked, examining the elegant calligraphy on our invitation. "With your great-grandmother, it's impossible to tell," I admitted. "She's either planning to give us all a lecture or she's about to change the game entirely." The day arrived cold and bright. Cars filled Rose's driveway as family members arrived, everyone dressed as if attending church. Even Daniel had flown in from Seattle, his expression serious, as he helped Jennifer from their rental car. Rose's lawyer, Mr. Hendricks, answered the door. He'd been managing her affairs for 30 years, and his presence confirmed this wasn't a social gathering. He directed us to the formal parlor where chairs had been arranged in rows, facing Rose's antique writing desk. "Please, everyone sit," Rose commanded from her position behind the desk. She wore her best Sunday dress and the pearls that never left her neck. Her eyes swept the room, taking attendance. "I see everyone I invited has come. Good." Patricia and Robert sat in the front row, having arrived through the back door to avoid being seen by those not invited. Whatever was happening, they'd chosen their side. I've lived 92 years. Rose began, her voice strong and clear. I've buried a husband, raised 4 children, and watched this family grow and change. I've stayed quiet through divorces, scandals, and disappointments, but what's happening now requires action. She nodded to Mr. Hendricks, who began distributing sealed envelopes to each person present. Do not open those yet, Rose instructed. First, I have some things to say. The room was silent, everyone leaning forward slightly. 2 months ago, I made a decision about my estate. I had planned to announce it at Madison's wedding, thinking it would be a joyous occasion to share good fortune with the family. Recent events have shown me the wisdom of handling things differently. Grandmother Rose. Patricia started, but Rose silenced her with a raised hand. I've spent the last weeks revising my will with Mr. Hendricks. What you hold in your hands are the relevant portions concerning each of you. But before you open them, I want to be clear about my reasoning. She stood moving around the desk to face us more directly. Despite her age, she commanded the room with the presence of someone who'd weathered every storm life could offer. Wealth, she said, is not just money. It's values. It's character. It's the legacy we leave beyond material possessions. I've watched Madison choose perceived status over family. I've watched Blake reveal his contempt for everything we are. And I've watched most of you stand up for what's right, even when it cost you. Most of us, Daniel whispered to Jennifer. Rose heard him. Yes, Daniel, most. Some of you took longer than others to see the truth, but you got there. That matters. She returned to her desk, pulling out a folder. Now let me tell you what you're actually dealing with. This family has always lived modestly carefully. Your grandfather insisted on it. But careful living and smart investing over 60 years adds up. She pulled out a financial statement and put on her reading glasses. The current value of my estate, including the house investments and various holdings, is approximately $8.7 million. The collective gasp could probably be heard outside. Emma grabbed my hand, her eyes wide. Robert's coffee cup rattled against its saucer. 8 million, Aunt Helen breathed. Rose, we had no idea. Because I never wanted you to, Rose replied crisply. Money changes people, makes them do ugly things, makes them value the wrong things, as Madison has so aptly demonstrated. Now you may open your envelopes. The room filled with the sound of tearing paper. I opened mine with trembling hands, Emma reading over my shoulder. The document was simple, but shocking. Rose was establishing education trusts for all great-grandchildren who demonstrated strong moral character and family values. Emma's name was listed with a fund of $500,000 set aside for her education and future endeavors. Oh my God, Emma whispered. Grandma Rose, this is too much. It's exactly right, Rose countered. You stood up for yourself with grace. You showed wisdom beyond your years. You remembered that family means more than status. That deserves to be rewarded. Around the room, others were reading their own documents. Daniel and Jennifer discovered trusts for their future children. Aunt Helen found provisions for Marcus's college. Sarah's twins were similarly provided for. But there's more, Rose continued. Robert, Patricia, please read yours aloud. Robert cleared his throat, his voice shaky. The house at 412 Maple Street to remain in the family as a gathering place with Robert and Patricia Sullivan as caretakers and primary residents for their lifetimes. We get to keep the house. Patricia was crying openly now. Someone needs to, Rose said practically. It's been in this family for 70 years. I won't see it sold to strangers because Madison thinks it's not impressive enough. Coco Rose turned to me. Your envelope contains something different. I looked down at the document again, finding a second page. My breath caught. Rose was gifting me $200,000 outright specifically designated to start my event planning business with an additional property downtown that could serve as an office. How did you know? I asked, stunned. Emma told me about your dreams during one of our tea visits. Rose smiled. You've spent years putting others first. Time to invest in yourself. What about Madison? Patricia asked quietly. She's your granddaughter, too. Rose's expression hardened slightly. Madison will receive exactly what she values appearances. I've set aside $50,000 for her child's education to be managed by trustees until the child is 18. Madison herself will receive my wedding china and silver worth approximately $20,000 at auction. She chose material goods over family. She'll receive material goods. She'll be furious, Robert said, though he didn't sound disapproving. Good, Rose replied sharply. Maybe fury will wake her up, though I doubt it. Mr. Hendricks spoke for the first time. There are conditions attached to all bequests. Any family member who attempts to contest the will forfeits their inheritance entirely. The trusts for children require maintaining good grades and participating in family gatherings. The business funding for Ms. Sullivan requires the business to be operational within 18 months. And, Rose added with a gleam in her eye, I've added one more provision. An annual family reunion mandatory for all beneficiaries to be held at this house every Thanksgiving. Missing more than 2 years without valid medical reasons results in forfeiting your inheritance. You're forcing us to stay connected, Daniel said with admiration, even after you're gone. Especially after I'm gone, Rose corrected. This family's strength has always been each other. I won't let that die because one member chose fool's gold over real treasure. When will this be announced to the others? Helen asked carefully. Rose smiled, and it wasn't entirely kind. I've scheduled a meeting with Madison and Blake for next week. Linda and the others who've supported them will be informed by letter afterward. I want to see Madison's face when she realizes what her choices have cost her. That seems cruel, Patricia said softly. No, Rose replied firmly. Cruel is telling a 15-year-old girl she's not good enough for your wedding. Cruel is letting your fiancé call your family white trash. Cruel is getting pregnant to secure money you think is coming from the family you've rejected. That's cruel. This is consequence. The meeting broke up slowly, everyone still processing the magnitude of what had just happened. Emma hugged Rose tightly, tears streaming down her face as she thanked her. Rose held her close, whispering something that made Emma nod solemnly. As we prepared to leave, Rose pulled me aside one more time. That business of yours, she said quietly. Make it something special. Show Madison what real success looks like, building something meaningful while keeping your values intact. I will, I promised. But Rose, are you sure about all this? It's so much money. Money's just paper if it doesn't do good, she replied pragmatically. Your grandfather would have wanted this. He always said the best inheritance you can leave is the knowledge that you're loved and valued for who you are, not what you have. Madison forgot that. The rest of you remembered. That's worth more than $8 million, but the $8 million doesn't hurt either. Driving home, Emma was uncharacteristically quiet. Finally, she spoke. Do you think Aunt Madison will ever forgive us? We didn't do anything that needs forgiving, I reminded her. We stood up for ourselves and each other. But to answer your question, I don't know. Money makes people show their true colors. We're about to see what Madison's really made of. I hope she surprises us, Emma said softly. I hope so too. But deep down, I suspected Rose was right. Madison had chosen her path, and now she'd have to walk it. The tragedy was that she'd walked it right out of a fortune she'd spent months grasping for, all because she couldn't see that the real treasure had been sitting around that Thanksgiving table all along. The wedding was 6 weeks away when Madison's house of cards began its spectacular collapse. It started with a single phone call on a Tuesday morning, but by Thursday, the complete catastrophe was apparent. I was reviewing business license applications for my event planning company when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Madison's number, and I almost didn't answer, but something, maybe instinct or maybe just morbid curiosity, made me pick up. Coco. Madison's voice was high and panicked. I need your help, please. Something terrible has happened. What's wrong? I asked, though I kept my tone neutral. The caterers just called. They're canceling 6 weeks before the wedding. They say we haven't paid the deposit, but Blake told me his mother handled it months ago. And now the florist is saying the same thing, and the photographer won't return my calls. Coco, what am I going to do? I could hear real fear in her voice, possibly the first genuine emotion she'd expressed in months. Have you asked Blake about it? He says it's a misunderstanding, that his mother's accountant must have made an error. But Coco, the caterer, said the check bounced, twice. And when they called Blake's mother, she said she never agreed to pay for anything. I see, I said carefully. So who was supposed to be paying for these vendors? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, in a small voice, she said, Blake told me his family was covering everything as their wedding gift to us. He said I shouldn't worry about money, just focus on making everything perfect. And you believed him. Why wouldn't I? She was crying now. He's my fiancé. His family has money. I thought about Catherine Worthington Mills's revelations, but decided Madison needed to discover that truth herself. What do you need from me? Can you loan me the money just until we sort this out? It's $40,000. I know it's a lot, but Grandmother Rose must have given you something by now, and I can pay you back after the wedding when what, Madison, I interrupted, when Blake's trust fund comes through, the one that requires you to stay married for 5 years. How do you know about that? She gasped. Everyone knows Madison. Just like everyone knows the Worthingtons are broke. Just like everyone knows Blake is marrying you for money that doesn't exist. That's not true. But her protest lacked conviction. Blake loves me. His family is just having some temporary cash flow issues. Madison, I don't have $40,000 to give you. And even if I did, I wouldn't. You chose this path. You chose Blake and his family over ours. You can't come running back now because the bills are due. But the wedding? Maybe you should have thought about that before banning your 15-year-old niece for being too young. I said my patience finally exhausted. Before letting Blake call us white trash. Before announcing your pregnancy like it was a business merger instead of a life. I'm your sister, she wailed. Doesn't that mean anything? It used to, I said sadly, but you decided we weren't good enough for your new life. You can't have it both ways, Madison. So you're just going to let me fail. The tears had turned to anger now. You're going to watch everything fall apart and do nothing. I'm going to continue living my life, I corrected, building my business, raising my daughter, spending time with the family members who still value each other. What you do is up to you. This is because of the will, isn't it? Her voice turned vicious. Grandmother Rose poisoned you all against me, bought your loyalty. Well, when Blake's family straightens this out, when we have the trust fund money, you'll all come crawling back. Madison. I said gently, there is no money. Not from Blake's family, not from the trust fund without staying married 5 years, not from our family after how you've treated us. There's no money coming. You're lying, she screamed. You're all jealous Blake said you would be. He said you'd try to sabotage us because you can't stand seeing me happy. Are you happy? I asked quietly. Really pregnant with a baby conceived for money, marrying a man who despises your family, planning a wedding you can't afford. Is that happiness? She hung up on me. Within an hour, my phone was exploding with messages from family members. Madison had called everyone desperately seeking loans, becoming increasingly hysterical as each person declined. The stories were remarkably similar. Blake's mother had promised to pay, the checks had bounced, and now vendors were threatening legal action. Daniel called me that evening with new information. I did some digging after Madison called, posted in a few wedding industry forums asking about the Worthington-Sullivan wedding. Coco, it's worse than we thought. How much worse can it get? Madison owes nearly $60,000 in total. She's been putting deposits on credit cards that are now maxed out. She told some vendors that her grandmother would pay directly. She's been forging Blake's mother's signature on contracts. Forging? I sat down hard. Daniel, that's fraud. I know, and it gets worse. When vendors started pushing for payment, she threatened them, told them Blake's family lawyers would destroy their businesses if they pulled out, mentioned defamation suits, breach of contract, even immigration status for one vendor. She's created a nightmare. My God, I breathed. How did it get this bad? Desperation, Daniel said simply. She believed Blake's lies so completely that she built her own lies on top of them. Now the whole thing is crashing down. The next morning, Veronica Hartwell called me again. This time she wasn't alone. She'd organized a conference call with 5 other vendors, and they'd clearly been comparing notes. "We wanted you to know what's happening," Veronica said carefully, "and to ask if your family is aware of the situation." I listened in growing horror as each vendor shared their story. Madison had promised payment from various sources: Blake's family, her grandmother, mysterious trust funds. She'd shown them fake bank statements, promised wire transfers that never arrived, and threatened anyone who questioned her. "The worst part," the photographer said, "is that she's been blaming you, telling everyone that her family is sabotaging the wedding out of jealousy, that you're intercepting payments and spreading lies about her." "We didn't believe it," the florist added quickly, "especially after we heard that recording of her fiancé. But we thought you should know what she's saying." "What are you all planning to do?" I asked. "We're pulling out," Veronica said firmly. "All of us. We've given her until Friday to pay in full or we walk. Given what we know now, we doubt she'll manage it. And if she threatens legal action," Leonard, the caterer, said grimly, "we've documented everything. The bounce checks, the forged signatures, the threats. If anyone's taking legal action, it'll be us." After the call, I sat in my kitchen staring at the wedding invitation that still sat on my counter. The beautiful calligraphy mocked me now, all those promises of elegance and sophistication, reduced to bounce checks and empty threats. Emma found me there when she got home from school. "Mom, what's wrong?" I explained the situation, watching her face cycle through shock, sadness, and finally a grim understanding. "So there won't be a wedding?" she asked. "Not the one Madison planned," I admitted. "Not unless a miracle happens in the next 2 days." "Do you think she'll ask us for help again?" I thought about my sister pregnant and desperate, watching her dream wedding crumble because she'd believed a con man's promises. Probably. The question is whether we should give it. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, with wisdom beyond her years, she said, "We can't save her from consequences, can we? She has to want to save herself first." "When did you get so smart?" I asked, pulling her into a hug. "I learned from watching you," she said simply. "You stood up for what was right even when it hurt. That's what real strength looks like." As if on cue, my phone rang again. Madison's number. I let it go to voicemail, but she called again immediately, and again. Finally, I answered. "Madison." "The florist just called," she interrupted, her voice eerily calm. "And the caterer, and the venue. They're all pulling out. All of them. Blake's mother won't take my calls. Blake says it's my fault for not managing them better. The wedding is in 6 weeks, and I have nothing. Nothing." "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. "No, you're not," she said bitterly. "You're all probably celebrating. The family pariah is getting what she deserves, right?" "Nobody's celebrating Madison. We're sad. Sad that you chose this path. Sad that you're hurting. Sad that you're having a baby with a man who's showing you exactly who he is." "I need help," she said, the words seemingly torn from her throat. "I can't fix this alone." "You're not alone," I reminded her. "You chose to push us away. But Madison, even if we wanted to help, we can't magic up $60,000. And more money won't fix the real problems here. Then what do I do?" For the first time in months, she sounded like my little sister again, lost, scared, and finally starting to see the truth. "You start by being honest," I said. "With yourself, with Blake, with everyone you've hurt. You figure out what really matters to you, and then you make different choices." "It's too late for that," she whispered. "It's never too late to choose differently," I said. "But you have to want to. Nobody can force you to see what you're determined to ignore." She hung up without saying goodbye. But something in her voice had changed. The wedding might be collapsing, but maybe Madison was finally waking up to reality. The question was whether she'd have the courage to face it or would double down on the fantasy until it destroyed her completely. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and tentative hope. Despite everything that had happened, or perhaps because of it, I decided to host my annual gathering. The invitation list was carefully curated. Only those who'd stood together during the family crisis were included. Madison and Blake were pointedly not invited, though Patricia had argued for their inclusion until Rose shut her down with a single look. Emma and I spent days preparing. She threw herself into decorating with enthusiasm that felt like defiance. "We're going to have the best Christmas ever," she declared, stringing lights with determined precision. "We're going to show everyone that family isn't about money or status. It's about love." The house smelled like cinnamon and pine when guests began arriving. Daniel and Jennifer brought homemade cookies. Aunt Helen contributed her famous mulled wine. Patricia and Robert came with gifts, and grateful smiles, clearly relieved to be included after their earlier wavering. "Thank you for having us," Patricia whispered as she hugged me. "I know we didn't handle things well at first." "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." Grandmother Rose arrived fashionably late, as always, wearing a deep burgundy dress and her signature pearls. But tonight she also wore something else, the Vanderbilt necklace, its diamonds catching the light like captured stars. "Grandmother," Emma gasped, "you're wearing it." "Of course I am," Rose said, touching the necklace gently. "It's a family celebration. This is exactly when it should be worn. Someday, my dear, you'll wear it to celebrations of your own." The evening progressed with the warmth and laughter that had been missing from recent family gatherings. We played games, shared stories, and carefully avoided mentioning the elephant not in the room. Madison's absence was felt but not discussed, like a missing tooth. You couldn't help probing but knew better than to aggravate. Around 9 o'clock, as Emma was helping serve dessert, she raised her glass of sparkling cider. The room quieted, everyone turning to attention to my poised 15-year-old daughter. "I wanted to make a toast." She began, her voice clear and steady. "This year has been hard. We've had division and pain and choices that broke our hearts. But look around this room. Look at who's here." She paused, making eye contact with each person. "We're still a family, a real family. Not because we're perfect or rich or sophisticated, but because when it mattered, we chose each other. We chose love over appearance, truth over comfort, and integrity over easy answers." "Hear, hear," Daniel murmured, raising his own glass. "So here's to us." Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. "To the family that stands together, to the love that doesn't require conditions or exclusions, to knowing that the best gift we can give each other is showing up just as we are." The room erupted in appreciation, glasses clinking and eyes misting. Rose looked at Emma with such pride I thought she might burst. "Out of the mouths of babes," Rose said, though her voice was thick with emotion. "Though you're hardly a baby anymore, Emma dear, you're becoming quite the remarkable young woman." That's when the doorbell rang. The room fell silent. We weren't expecting anyone else. Patricia half rose from her seat, hope and dread warring on her face. "I'll get it," I said, though my heart was suddenly racing. I opened the door to find Madison standing on my porch. She was alone, snowflakes caught in her disheveled hair, her coat hanging open over her small baby bump. Her face was swollen from crying mascara, long since given up the ghost. "Madison," I breathed. "What are you doing here?" "Can I—" She swallowed hard. "Can I come in? Please, I know I wasn't invited. I know I don't deserve it, but I didn't know where else to go." I stood aside, letting her enter. She stopped just inside the doorway, taking in the warm scene, the decorated tree the family gathered around the living room, the evidence of a celebration she'd excluded herself from. "Madison." Patricia jumped up, rushing to her daughter. "Sweetheart, what's happened? Where's Blake?" Madison laughed, but it was a broken sound. "Blake left. Took his car, his things, and what was left of my dignity. Turns out when you can't pay for a $200,000 wedding, you're not worth sticking around for. He left you, Robert stood, his face darkening, on Christmas Eve while you're pregnant. This morning. Madison confirmed, allowing Patricia to help her out of her coat. Right after he found out about Grandmother Rose's will. Funny how that timing works out. All eyes turned to Rose, who sat perfectly still watching her granddaughter with unreadable eyes. How did he find out? I asked. Madison's laugh turned bitter. I told him. Stupid right, I thought if he knew there was no money coming, no big inheritance, we could start fresh. Build something real together. Focus on the baby instead of the wedding that's already canceled. And his response was to leave. Jennifer couldn't hide her disgust. His response. Madison said sinking into the chair Daniel offered was to ask if I could get an abortion and try again with someone who actually had money. When I refused, he packed his bags. The room exploded in outrage. Even Rose looked shaken by Blake's cruelty. Emma, wise enough to know when to act quietly, brought Madison a cup of tea and a plate of cookies. Thank you, Madison whispered, accepting both with shaking hands. She looked at Emma for a long moment. I owe you an apology, a real one. You're not too young or too chaotic or too anything. You're perfect exactly as you are, and I was horrible to say otherwise. Emma studied her aunt carefully. Did you mean that? Or are you just saying it because you need us now? The directness of the question made several people gasp, but Madison met her niece's gaze steadily. Both, she admitted. I need you now, yes, but I also mean it. I've been sitting in my empty apartment all day thinking about every choice I made, every person I hurt, every relationship I threw away for a man who just proved he never loved me at all. Madison, Rose spoke for the first time. What do you want from us? Madison turned to face her grandmother, tears streaming down her face. I don't know. Forgiveness. Another chance. A time machine to go back and slap some sense into myself 6 months ago. She pressed her hands to her stomach. I'm 28 years old, 6 months pregnant, $50,000 in debt from a wedding that's not happening, and I just realized I have no idea who I am anymore. That's a start, Rose said quietly. Knowing you're lost is the first step to finding your way back. Can I, Madison asked, looking around the room, find my way back after everything I said and did, after choosing them over all of you? That's not for us to decide, I said, finding my voice. That's up to you, Madison. We can't save you. We can't fix this for you. But if you're really ready to do the work to make amends to rebuild what you broke, then maybe we can find a path forward. I'll do anything, Madison said desperately. I'll apologize to every vendor I threatened. I'll get a job to pay off the debts. I'll go to therapy to figure out how I became someone who would trade family for fairy tales. Just, please, don't give up on me entirely. Patricia was crying openly now, holding her daughter's hand. Robert looked torn between anger at Blake and relief at Madison's return. The rest of the family watched, waiting for some sign of what came next. Finally, Grandmother Rose stood. She walked to Madison slowly, her cane tapping against the floor. When she reached her granddaughter, she studied her for a long moment. Stand up, she commanded. Madison stood trembling slightly. Rose reached up and unclasped the Vanderbilt necklace from around her neck. The room gasped collectively. Grandmother, no, Madison protested. I don't deserve... Hush, Rose interrupted. She held the necklace up, letting it catch the light. This necklace represents family legacy. Not money, not status, but the values we pass down through generations. You forgot those values, Madison. You traded them for illusions. Madison nodded miserably. But, Rose continued, everyone deserves a chance at redemption. So I'm going to hold on to this necklace for now. It still belongs to Emma because she remembered what you forgot. But if you can rebuild what you broke, if you can prove that you've truly learned from this disaster, then someday you'll dance at her wedding wearing these diamonds. As family. Real family. She handed the necklace to me for safekeeping, then pulled Madison into a surprising hug. Welcome back, child. You've got a long road ahead, but at least you're finally on the right path. The room seemed to exhale collectively. Emma was the first to move, walking up to Madison with determined steps. I forgive you, she said simply. Not because you asked, but because holding on to anger won't change anything. But Aunt Madison, you have to earn back trust. That takes time. I know, Madison whispered. Thank you for giving me the chance to try. One by one, family members approached Madison. Some offered hugs, others just nods of acknowledgement. It wasn't the warm reconciliation of movie endings, but it was real. Messy, complicated, painful, and real. So Daniel said, eventually practical as always, what's the immediate plan? Where are you staying? Madison looked embarrassed. Blake's name was on the lease. The landlord gave me until the end of the month to move out. I've been packing and trying to figure out where to go. You'll stay with us, Patricia said immediately. No arguments. You're pregnant and alone on Christmas. You're coming home. Actually, I heard myself saying, I have a better idea. Everyone turned to look at me. I'm starting my event planning business in January. I'll need help. Someone who knows vendors, understands contracts, has experience with difficult clients. I met Madison's shocked gaze. The pay won't be much at first, but it's honest work. And maybe we can figure out how to clean up some of the mess with the wedding vendors. You'd hire me? Madison asked in disbelief. After everything, I'd give you a chance, I corrected. What you do with it is up to you. Emma squeezed my hand, and I knew she understood. This wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about choosing to believe people could change, could learn, could become better versions of themselves. Now, Grandmother Rose announced, settling back into her chair, can we please return to our celebration? It's Christmas Eve, we're all together, and there's still dessert to be eaten. Madison, sit down and eat something. You're too thin, and you're eating for two now. As the evening resumed, different now, but somehow richer for the honesty, I caught Rose's eye. She winked at me, and I understood. The quiet change I'd made at Christmas wasn't about presents or decorations, or even forgiveness. It was about creating space for redemption, about choosing hope over bitterness, about remembering that family isn't about perfection, but about showing up for each other when it matters most. Madison sat between Patricia and Emma, slowly relaxing as the family folded her back in. She had a long way to go, debts to pay both financial and emotional, and a baby to raise alone. But she was here surrounded by people who would help her find her way back to herself. And that more than any wedding or wealth or social status was what real family looked like. 3 days after Christmas, reality crashed back with a vengeance. I was in my home office working on the business plan for my event planning company when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. Is this Coco Sullivan, a man's voice professionally cold? Yes, who is this? This is Marcus Wellington from Wellington Associates. I'm calling regarding your sister, Madison Sullivan. She listed you as her emergency contact. My blood ran cold. Is she okay? Is the baby? She's physically fine, he assured me quickly. This is regarding a legal matter. Miss Sullivan was arrested this morning at Blake Worthington's residence. She's being held at the county jail pending arraignment. The room spun. Arrested for what? Breaking and entering attempted theft in violation of a restraining order. Mr. Worthington filed emergency paperwork yesterday. Your sister was found attempting to remove items from his apartment this morning. I'll be right there, I said, already grabbing my keys. Miss Sullivan, the lawyer continued, bail will likely be set at around $10,000. Will you be able to— I'll figure it out, I interrupted. Just make sure she's okay. The drive to the jail was a blur. I called Patricia on the way, her hysteria making it hard to get details across. Robert said he'd meet me there with what cash they could gather. Daniel, still in town for the holidays, promised to contact a lawyer friend. I found Madison in a holding cell, still wearing the dress she'd worn to Christmas Eve dinner, now rumpled and stained. Her face was puffy from crying, her hands protective over her bump. Coco, she sobbed when she saw me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. "What happened?" I asked, gripping the bars between us. "Madison, what were you thinking?" "He has my things," she said desperately. "My grandmother's jewelry box, my photo albums, my computer with all my work files. I just wanted to get my stuff while he was supposed to be at his parents' house. But he was there, waiting like he knew I'd come. You broke into his apartment." "I still had a key. I lived there for 8 months. Half that stuff is mine. But he'd changed the locks, so I tried to go through the window." "The window." I stared at her in disbelief. "Madison, you're 6 months pregnant." "I know." She was sobbing harder now. "I know it was stupid, but he has the only copies of my ultrasound photos, the baby books I'd started. Everything that proves this pregnancy is real and documented. I panicked." A guard approached. 5 more minutes. I lowered my voice. "Madison, why would you need to prove the pregnancy is real?" She looked away, shame coloring her features. "Blake's been telling people I faked it, that I'm not really pregnant, just trying to trap him. His mother called my doctor's office pretending to be me, trying to get information. They're building some kind of case against me." "Case? What kind of case?" "I don't know." Madison gripped the bars. "But his lawyer sent a letter demanding a paternity test and claiming I committed fraud by misrepresenting my financial status during our relationship. They're saying I deceived Blake about family money to trick him into marriage. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so tragic. But Blake was the one lying about money. Try proving that," Madison said bitterly. "They have paperwork, Coco, forged documents with my signature claiming Grandmother Rose had already promised me inheritances. Emails from my account I never sent talking about trust funds that don't exist. Blake must have had access to everything and set me up from the beginning." The guard returned. "Time's up." "We'll get you out," I promised. "Just hang on." The next hours were a whirlwind of phone calls, paperwork, and pooled resources. Patricia and Robert emptied their savings. Daniel contributed what he could. Even Aunt Helen showed up with a check. But we were still short. "I'll cover the rest," a familiar voice said from behind us. We turned to find Grandmother Rose in the police station lobby, checkbook in hand, dignity intact, despite the surroundings. "Mother, you don't have to," Robert started. "Hush," Rose commanded. "That's my great-grandchild she's carrying. Whatever mistakes Madison has made, the baby doesn't deserve to have a mother in jail." With bail posted, we waited another agonizing hour for Madison's release. When she finally emerged, she looked smaller, somehow defeated in a way that even Blake's abandonment hadn't achieved. "Thank you," she whispered to Rose. "I know I don't deserve—" "You're right you don't," Rose interrupted. "But deserve's got nothing to do with it. You're family. Now let's get out of here before anyone sees us and starts gossiping." We convoyed back to my house for an emergency family meeting. Madison sat in the center of the living room looking like a child called before the principal. "Tell us everything," I instructed. "From the beginning. No lies, no omissions." Madison took a shaky breath. "It started before I even met Blake. I was at a charity function trying to network for my marketing job. I might have exaggerated about our family's connections, said Grandmother Rose was a philanthropist, implied we had old money." "Madison," Patricia groaned. "I know," Madison continued, "but everyone there was dropping names and inflating their importance. I thought it was just part of the game. Then Blake approached me. He'd overheard, seemed impressed. We started talking, and he was so charming, so sophisticated." "So calculating," Daniel muttered. "He asked about our family within the first hour," Madison admitted. "Specific questions about properties, investments, trusts. But he was subtle about it, made it seem like general interest. And I wanted to impress him, so I built on the lies." "What kind of lies?" Rose asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Madison couldn't meet her eyes. "I said you owned multiple properties, that there were trust funds set up for all the grandchildren, that the family business was sold for millions, small exaggerations that snowballed. And Blake believed it all. He seemed to. We dated for 3 months before he proposed. Everything was such a whirlwind. He introduced me to his family, this whole world of country clubs and charity galas. I felt like Cinderella. More like Little Red Riding Hood, Emma said quietly, and Blake was the wolf. Madison nodded miserably. The red flags were there. How he always let me pay for things, saying he was waiting for a wire transfer. How his mother kept asking about my grandmother's health, her estate planning. But I was so blinded by the fairy tale. When did you realize the truth about his finances? I asked. Not until after the engagement. Little things started adding up. Creditors calling his phone notices I wasn't supposed to see. But by then I was in so deep. I'd already started planning the wedding, telling everyone about my perfect fiancé. I couldn't admit I'd been fooled. So you doubled down, Robert said heavily. Started spending money you didn't have. Blake encouraged it, Madison said defensively. He said appearances were important, that we had to project success to achieve it. He helped me apply for credit cards, co-signed loans. I thought we were building a future together. He was building a fraud case, Daniel said grimly. Madison, do you have any of this in writing? Any proof that he was involved in the deception? Madison shook her head. He was careful. Everything questionable was done verbally or from my accounts. On paper, it looks like I was the one lying, spending, deceiving. And now he's going to use it against you, I finished. Claim you defrauded him, maybe sue for damages, definitely contest any child support. Can he do that? Patricia asked, horrified. With the right lawyer and manufactured evidence, probably, Daniel said. Madison, we need to get you a good attorney immediately. With what money? Madison laughed bitterly. I'm $50,000 in debt, jobless, homeless, and now I have an arrest record. Who's going to hire me? How am I going to raise a baby god? What have I done? You've learned a very expensive lesson, Rose said firmly, but wallowing won't fix it. First things first, you need to document everything you remember about Blake's involvement. Every conversation, every lie he told, every time he encouraged you to spend money. Why would that matter? It's my word against his. Not quite, I said, an idea forming. Madison, you said Blake had access to your email, your accounts. Yes, I gave him all my passwords. He said couples shouldn't have secrets. Which means, I continued, excitement building, there might be digital footprints, login records, IP addresses, metadata showing he was accessing your accounts. We need a forensic computer expert. I know someone, Daniel offered. From my company, she specializes in this kind of thing. Good, Rose said, standing with effort. Madison, you're going to fight this, not with lies or schemes or fairy tales, but with truth and hard work. It won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. What if I can't? Madison asked quietly. What if Blake wins? What if I lose everything? You've already lost everything that doesn't matter. Emma said, wisdom beyond her years, showing again. The fancy apartment, the society wedding the fake fiancé. What's left is what's real. Your baby, your family, your chance to rebuild as someone authentic. Madison looked at her niece with something like awe. When did you become so wise? When my aunt taught me what not to do, Emma replied simply. As the family rallied around Madison, making plans and pooling resources, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. This wasn't about enabling her or forgetting her betrayals. It was about recognizing that sometimes people need help finding their way back from rock bottom. Coco, Madison said quietly as the meeting broke up, I need to tell you something about the business offer you made at Christmas. What about it? I don't deserve it. I know that. But if you're still willing, I want to earn it. Start at the bottom, do whatever grunt work you need. I know vendors, even the ones I burned. I can help make amends, rebuild those relationships, and I swear I'll never lie to you or anyone else again. I studied my sister, seeing not the polished society wannabe she'd tried to become, but the scared pregnant woman who'd finally hit bottom and was ready to climb back up. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, I said. Minimum wage to start. You'll be doing filing, answering phones, whatever I need. No special treatment because you're my sister. I don't want special treatment, Madison said firmly. I want to earn my way back, to prove I can be someone worth trusting again. Then Monday it is. I agreed. But Madison 1 lie one scheme, one step backward, and you're out. The baby won't be an excuse for second chances. Understood, she said. And Coco, thank you for everything. Even when I hated you for being right somewhere deep down, I knew you were the sister I should have been. As I watched her leave with our parents, I wondered if people could really change that fundamentally. But then I thought about Emma's words. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the chance to prove they've learned from their mistakes. Time would tell if Madison had truly learned from hers. The emergency family meeting was called for New Year's Day, a fitting date for new beginnings and hard truths. Grandmother Rose's living room had never been so full with folding chairs brought in to accommodate everyone who'd rallied to Madison's defense. Before we begin, Rose announced from her wingback chair, I want to make something clear. We're not here to enable Madison or pretend her choices didn't have consequences. We're here to prevent a con artist from destroying her completely and ensuring my great-grandchild has a chance at a decent life. Agreed, Daniel said, pulling out a laptop. I've been working with my computer forensics contact. She found some interesting things in Madison's accounts. He connected his laptop to Rose's rarely used television, bringing up a series of documents and data logs. Blake was consistently accessing Madison's email and social media accounts. Daniel explained highlighting timestamps. Often when Madison was at work or asleep, he sent dozens of emails from her account to various vendors' family members and his own alternate addresses. Can we prove it was him? Aunt Helen asked. The IP addresses trace back to his devices and locations where Madison wasn't present, Daniel confirmed. He also made changes to her phone settings, installing monitoring apps and keyloggers. Everything she typed, every password she entered, he had access to. The fool gave him everything, Robert muttered, though his tone was more sad than angry. There's more, Daniel continued. Blake created fake email threads between Madison and fictitious lawyers discussing non-existent trust funds. He forged documents using her signature from legitimate papers she'd signed. This was a long-term, deliberate con. So we can prove Madison was manipulated, Patricia asked hopefully. We can prove Blake had unauthorized access and created fraudulent documents, Daniel clarified. Whether that's enough to counter his claims depends on the lawyer and judge. Speaking of lawyers, a new voice said from the doorway. We turned to find a sharp-dressed woman in her 50s entering with a briefcase. Sandra Morrison, Criminal Defense and Family Law. Rose called me. Sandra's the best, Rose said simply. She's handled delicate matters for several prominent families. If anyone can untangle this mess, it's her. Sandra sat up at the dining table, spreading out files with practiced efficiency. I've reviewed the arrest report and Blake's initial filings. He's claiming fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and theft by deception. He's seeking damages of $200,000. The room erupted in outraged voices until Sandra raised a hand for silence. It's a scare tactic, she continued calmly. He knows Madison has no money. What he wants is leverage to avoid child support and maintain his victim narrative for his next mark. His next mark? Madison asked quietly from her corner seat. Sandra pulled out a file. Blake Worthington has done this before. Different cities, different women, always the same pattern. Find someone who seems to have family money, romance them, create financial entanglements, then claim fraud when the money doesn't materialize. How is he not in jail? Jennifer demanded. Because he's smart, Sandra admitted. He always ensures his victims are complicit in some deception, uses their embarrassment and fear against them. Most women just want to move on, not fight public legal battles while pregnant or humiliated. Well, Madison's going to fight, Rose declared, whatever it costs. Grandmother, no, Madison protested. You've already done too much. Hush, Rose commanded. Sandra, what do we need to do? Sandra outlined a comprehensive strategy. First, they'd counterfile for harassment, identity theft, and fraud. The forensic evidence Daniel had gathered would be crucial. Second, they'd petition for a restraining order keeping Blake away from Madison and the baby. Third, they'd aggressively pursue child support using Blake's own inflated claims of wealth against him. He wants to claim Madison deceived him about money. Sandra smiled sharply. Fine. Then he can explain to the court why a wealthy businessman is refusing to support his child. What about the criminal charges? I asked. The breaking and entering. First offense, pregnant woman trying to retrieve personal belongings. Sandra waved dismissively. I'll get it pled down to a misdemeanor with community service. The restraining order Blake filed is more problematic, but we'll argue it was obtained under false pretenses. How can we help? Emma asked, surprising everyone with her presence. I hadn't noticed her slip in. Sandra studied my daughter approvingly. You already have. That recording from Thanksgiving Gold. It shows Blake's pattern of disdain for Madison's family, contradicting his claim that he was deceived about their status. I have more, Emma said quietly, pulling out her phone. I've been recording family events for a while, just in case. There's video of Aunt Madison from last year before Blake talking about struggling with money, and video from family dinners where Blake made comments about our quaint lifestyle. Emma. Madison breathed. You were protecting us even then. I was protecting the truth, Emma corrected. Facts matter. Evidence matters, and family matters even when they make mistakes. Sandra reviewed Emma's videos with increasing excitement. This is excellent. It establishes Madison's actual financial situation before Blake and shows his knowledge of it. You've got a future in law, young lady. Event planning, actually, Emma said with a small smile. I'm learning from Mom. The meeting continued for hours with family members volunteering resources, time, and support. Cousin Sarah offered her accounting expertise to untangle Madison's debts. Aunt Helen's husband, a contractor, volunteered to renovate the small apartment above my future office space for Madison and the baby. Jennifer started a meal train to ensure Madison ate properly during the pregnancy. Why? Madison asked at one point, overwhelmed by the support. Why are you all doing this? I was horrible to everyone. I chose Blake over all of you. Because, Patricia said firmly, that's what family does. We don't abandon each other even when we're angry or hurt. We show up. And because, Robert added, we all make mistakes. Yours were just more public and expensive than most. Plus, Daniel said with dark humor, we really don't like Blake. Consider this our collective middle finger to him and his con artist family. Even Madison managed a watery laugh at that. As the meeting wound down, Sandra pulled Madison aside for private consultation. The rest of us started cleaning up the atmosphere lighter, despite the challenges ahead. You know, Grandmother Rose said to me quietly, I've seen a lot in my 92 years. Seen this family weather scandals, bankruptcies, divorces, and deaths. But I've never seen us unite quite like this. Madison's fall brought out the best in everyone. I agreed. No, Rose corrected. Madison's return did. Her fall just showed us who we really are. Her humility and willingness to accept responsibility. That's what brought everyone together. Do you think she's really changed? Rose considered this carefully. I think she's been broken down to her foundation. Now we get to see what she rebuilds. But having all of us as her construction crew, she's got a fighting chance. Sandra returned looking satisfied. Madison's agreed to full transparency moving forward. All financial decisions run through me or a family member. It's humbling for her, but necessary. Whatever it takes, Madison said, rejoining us. Her hand rested on her bump. This baby deserves better than the mess I created. I want to be someone they can be proud of. You will be, Emma said confidently. Mistakes don't define us, how we fix them does. As everyone prepared to leave, the family formed an impromptu receiving line, each person hugging Madison and whispering encouragement. Even the cousins who'd been most offended by the wedding snub offered support. Blake thought he was isolating you, Aunt Helen observed. Instead, he unified us. His loss our gain. His loss indeed, Sandra said with professional satisfaction. By the time I'm done with him in court, he'll wish he'd never heard the Sullivan name. The last to leave was Rose, who pressed something into Madison's hand. It was a small pearl ring, simple but elegant. "This was mine when I was young and foolish," Rose said. "I nearly threw my life away for a charming man, too. Your grandfather saved me from that mistake. Now we're all saving you. Wear this as a reminder that second chances are precious. Don't waste yours." Madison slipped the ring on, tears flowing freely. "I won't, I promise." As I locked up and prepared to drive Madison to her temporary home with our parents, I felt something shift in the family dynamic. The crisis had burned away pretense and old grievances, leaving something stronger in its place. "Ready?" I asked Madison. She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Ready to fight, ready to rebuild, ready to become who I should have been all along." "Good," I said, linking my arm through hers, "because tomorrow you start work, and I don't give easy days just because you're family." "I don't want easy days," Madison replied firmly. "I want honest ones, days where I can look in the mirror and respect who I see. That's worth more than any fairy tale wedding." As we drove away, I saw Rose watching from her window. She raised her hand in blessing, and I knew that despite everything, we were going to be okay. Not perfect, not without scars, but okay. And sometimes okay is the best kind of victory. 1 year later, I stood in the backyard of Grandmother Rose's house, watching the controlled chaos of Emma's Sweet 16 party unfold. The same yard that had hosted tense family gatherings now rang with genuine laughter and joy. "Madison, the flower arrangements are stunning," Jennifer called out, admiring the centerpieces my sister had designed. Madison smiled, adjusting a wayward peony while balancing 6-month-old Lily on her hip. "Thanks, Emma wanted something elegant but not fussy. I think we found the right balance." It was hard to reconcile this Madison with the one who'd stood on my porch that Christmas Eve, broken and desperate. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by practical but pretty sundresses from Target. The perfect makeup had given way to a fresh-faced glow that came from honest work and good sleep. The brittle society laugh had been replaced by genuine smiles. Mama Lily gurgled, reaching for the flowers. "No, baby girl," Madison cooed. "Those are for Cousin Emma's special day." Emma appeared at my elbow, radiant in the deep blue dress she'd once saved as a link for a wedding she wasn't invited to attend. "Mom, this is perfect, thank you." "Thank your Aunt Madison," I said. "She did most of the planning." "Already did," Emma grinned. "She cried. Lily tried to eat my thank you card." The party was deliberately modest but meaningful. No champagne fountains or string quartets, just good food, family, and Emma's friends from school. The teenagers had commandeered one corner of the yard for dancing, while adults mingled near the buffet tables my new business had catered. Sullivan Sisters Event Planning had officially launched 6 months ago with Madison as my first and most dedicated employee. She'd started at minimum wage filing papers and answering phones. Now she was my partner in all but name her creativity and attention to detail invaluable. More importantly, she'd personally visited every vendor she'd burned, apologizing and working out payment plans. Most had been won over by her genuine contrition and willingness to make amends. "Coco," Patricia called out, "Rose wants to see you and Madison in the sunroom." We found Grandmother Rose holding court in her favorite chair, Lily on her lap, the Vanderbilt necklace glittering at her throat. "There are my girls," she beamed, "all 4 generations of Sullivan women." "4?" Madison asked, then gasped. "Grandma, are you?" "It's Emma's birthday," Rose said simply, "and I'm 93 years old. If I can't break my own rules occasionally, what's the point of making them?" She beckoned Emma forward, reaching up to unclasp the necklace. "I believe this belongs to you now, my dear. Wear it well and remember what it represents." Emma's eyes filled with tears as Rose fastened the diamonds around her neck. "It represents family, real family, the kind that stands together." "Precisely," Rose approved. "And that includes you, Madison. You've earned your place back at this table." Madison clutched Lily tighter, her own tears falling. "I still can't believe you all forgave me, that you gave me another chance." Forgiveness isn't a one-time gift, I said. You earn it every day by being who you've become. The sister who works 14-hour days to build our business. The mother who puts Lily first always. The woman who owns her mistakes and makes amends. Speaking of amends, Daniel interjected from the doorway, you'll want to see this. He handed Madison an official-looking envelope. She opened it with trembling hands, then sank into the nearest chair. What is it? Patricia asked anxiously. The court ruling, Madison whispered. Blake's lawsuit has been dismissed with prejudice. He can never file these claims against me again. The room erupted in celebration. Sandra Morrison had been worth every penny systematically destroying Blake's case with the evidence we'd gathered. The forensic data, Emma's recordings, and testimony from Blake's previous victims had painted a clear picture of a serial con artist. There's more. Madison continued reading further. He's been ordered to pay child support retroactively from birth and, oh my God, there's a warrant for his arrest on fraud charges in Connecticut. He's going to jail, Emma asked. Eventually, Daniel confirmed. Turns out when you make enemies of multiple women with nothing left to lose, they start comparing notes. 3 of his exes testified for the prosecution. What about the famous trust fund? Jennifer asked. Madison actually laughed. Frozen by the court's pending investigation. Even if it exists, Lily and I won't see a penny for years. And you know what? I don't care. We have everything we need. As if understanding, Lily reached up and patted her mother's face with a chubby hand. Madison caught it and kissed the tiny fingers. Besides, Madison added, I make honest money now. It's not much, but it's mine. Ours. And nobody can take that away. The party continued outside, but our little group lingered in the sunroom, savoring the moment. A year ago, we'd been fractured, some of us barely speaking. Now we were stronger than ever. I should get back, Emma said eventually. My friends are probably wondering where I am. But first, she pulled out her phone, gathering us all together for a selfie. 4 generations of Sullivan women, from Rose's 93 years of wisdom to Lily's 6 months of possibility, crowded into the frame. This, Emma declared, is my real Sweet 16 gift. My family together and whole. As we returned to the party, Madison pulled me aside. I've been thinking about the business. We're doing well enough now that we could expand. Maybe bring on another employee. Who did you have in mind? Marcus, Aunt Helen's son. He just graduated with a degree in marketing and he's brilliant with social media. Plus, she smiled ruefully. He was one of the teenagers I excluded from the wedding. Seems fitting to offer him an opportunity. From excluding family to including them, I mused. I like it. Set up the interview. Already did, Madison grinned. He'll be here Monday. I knew you'd say yes. Getting confident, are we? Getting better at reading people, she corrected, especially the ones who matter. The afternoon wore on with games cake and endless pictures. Emma made a speech thanking everyone for coming, but especially thanking the family for showing her what strength looked like. This year taught me that sometimes the worst things that happen can lead to the best outcomes. She said, wise beyond her 16 years. We lost fake relationships but gained real ones. We faced hard truths but found genuine love. And we learned that family isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the yard, I found myself standing next to Madison as she nursed Lily in a quiet corner. No regrets? I asked. She considered this carefully. About Blake, none. He gave me Lily, and that's the only good thing that came from that relationship. About the pain I caused, so many regrets, but also gratitude because without hitting rock bottom, I never would have found myself. And who is that? Madison smiled, the kind of genuine, peaceful smile I hadn't seen from her in years. A single mom who works hard, a sister who values family, a woman who knows the difference between fairy tales and real love. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And real is so much better than anything I was chasing before. Sandra Morrison arrived as the party was winding down, pulling Madison aside with a satisfied expression. We all pretended not to watch as they talked, but when Madison let out a whoop of joy, subtlety went out the window. Blake took a plea deal, Madison announced. 18 months in federal prison, 3 years probation, and he has to pay restitution to all his victims. It's over. It's really finally over. Rose raised her teacup in a toast. To justice served and lessons learned, may we all be wiser for this journey. And may we never forget what really matters, Madison added, bouncing Lily gently. Family, honesty, and the courage to start over when we lose our way. As guests began departing, Emma approached wearing the Vanderbilt necklace like it had always belonged on her. Aunt Madison, I wanted to ask you something. Anything, birthday girl? Will you be Lily's guardian for values, like help make sure she grows up knowing what really matters? Because you've learned it the hard way, and that makes you the perfect teacher. Madison pulled Emma into a fierce hug, Lily squealing happily between them. I would be honored, but honestly, with you as her cousin, I think she's going to learn just fine. The evening ended with family members lingering, reluctant to break the spell of togetherness. Patricia and Robert played with Lily, delighted with their first grandchild. Daniel and Jennifer discussed plans for starting their own family. Rose held court from her chair, dispensing wisdom and watching her legacy unfold. You know what the best part is? Emma said to me as we started cleaning up. This feels better than any fancy wedding could have, because everyone here wants to be here. Nobody was excluded or made to feel less than. It's just family. The way it should be, I agreed. Madison joined us, Lily asleep in her carrier. Thank you, she said simply. Both of you. For not giving up on me. For showing me the way back. For being the family I tried to throw away. Thank yourself, Emma said firmly. You're the one who did the work. We just left the light on. As the last guest departed and we finished tidying Rose's yard, I reflected on the journey we'd taken. A wedding that never happened had led to something far more valuable. A family renewed bonds, strengthened by truth, and the knowledge that real love doesn't require perfection, just presence, persistence, and the courage to choose each other again and again. Madison loaded Lily into her practical sedan, so different from the luxury car she'd once leased to impress Blake. See you Monday morning. 8 sharp, I confirmed. We have the Henderson anniversary party to finalize. Can't wait, she said, and meant it. As I drove home with Emma, the Vanderbilt necklace safely boxed in her lap, she asked, Do you think everything happened the way it was supposed to? Like maybe we needed to break apart to come back together stronger? I considered this. I think we all learned what we truly value, and sometimes it takes almost losing something to realize how precious it is. Then I'm glad it happened, Emma decided. Not the pain parts, but the growth parts, the together parts, the real parts. Me too, sweetheart, me too. The porch light was on when we got home, welcoming us back. Inside, the red light on the answering machine blinked with new messages, probably clients for the business Madison and I were building together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that success isn't measured in dollars or status, but in the strength of the bonds we choose to honor. But tonight we were just a mother and daughter, an aunt and her baby, a grandmother and her legacy, a family that had weathered the storm and emerged not unscarred, but unbroken. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Have you ever faced a family crisis that tested your bonds? When relatives choose status over relationships, or when money matters, threaten to tear loved ones apart? How do you find your way back to what really matters? Share your own stories of family redemption in the comments below. Whether it's a wedding that divided relatives, an inheritance that caused conflict, or any situation where you had to choose between appearances and authentic love, I'd love to hear how your family found its way back together. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real, raw stories about the choices that define us. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that it's never too late to choose family over fairy tales, and that real love means showing up for each other, especially when it's hard. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May your own family stories be filled with the kind of love that doesn't require perfection, just presence, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. Until next time, remember the best inheritance you can leave or receive isn't money or status. It's the knowledge that you are loved for exactly who you are.